poor girl begged a millionaire to sleep in a doghouse. His response shocked everyone. The storm rolled in from the Mediterranean like an army, its thunder shaking the cliffs of Monaco. Rain poured in sheets, hammering rooftops, flooding the cobblestone streets. People ran for cover, slamming shutters, huddling in warm cafes. But in the chaos, a little girl ran barefoot through the night, her tiny figure swallowed by the downpour. Her name was Sarah. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, her thin dress clinging to her trembling frame, her feet cut and muddy. In her arms she clutched a ragged toy rabbit, its stuffing spilling out from one side, but she held it as if it were the only thing keeping her alive. Behind her, the sound of boots splashed angrily through the water. A man's voice cut through the storm, harsh, commanding, cruel. "Stop running, girl. You're ours. You can't hide forever." Before we continue with this incredible journey, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Sarah gasped for air, her lungs burning. She stumbled, splattering mud across her face, but she scrambled up again, terrified. She knew what would happen if they caught her. She had seen what they did to others. Her small body ached, but she pushed forward, darting down an alley, her heart hammering like a drum. Then she saw it. At the end of the narrow street stood a towering iron gate, gilded with golden crests, rising out of the earth like the entrance to another world. Beyond it lay acres of manicured gardens, trees bending under the force of the wind, and in the center, a mansion that seemed to touch the sky. Light flickered faintly in its windows, a beacon in the storm. Sarah didn't think twice. She squeezed through a crack in the gate, scraping her arm but ignoring the sting. Inside, she darted across the gravel path, her wet hair whipping her face, until she found a stone archway covered in ivy. There she crouched, hugging her toy rabbit, shivering violently. She whispered to it, her lips blue from the cold. "Just one night. Please, just let us hide here." The storm raged on. Minutes became hours. Sarah's eyelids drooped, exhaustion tugging at her. She had survived the streets, but how much longer could she keep running? Then, through the hiss of rain, the deep purr of an engine approached. Headlights swept across the courtyard as a long black limousine rolled through the gates, its wheels crunching the gravel. The rear door opened, and out stepped a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal coat. His presence was commanding, almost regal, though his face bore the tiredness of a man who had long ago stopped believing in joy. His name was Nathaniel Drake. The billionaire. The recluse. The man whose name was whispered across boardrooms from New York to Tokyo. He had built empires out of steel and glass, but his heart was known to be as cold as the marble floors he walked on. Tonight, however, as thunder rolled overhead, fate had brought him home to an encounter that would change everything. Nathaniel adjusted his coat, striding toward the front doors of his mansion. His staff hurried to greet him, umbrellas raised, but he waved them off. He preferred silence. He preferred control. But then he stopped. Out of the corner of his eye, something moved. A shadow in the garden. His gaze sharpened. From beneath the ivy arch, a small figure emerged. Soaking wet, trembling, barefoot. Sarah stepped forward, clutching her rabbit like a shield. Her wide eyes met his, full of fear but also hope. Nathaniel froze. This was no intruder. No thief. Just a child. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm filled the silence between them. Then, in the smallest of voices, Sarah whispered, "Please, can I sleep in your dog's house?" Nathaniel blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. His mansion had 120 rooms, each more extravagant than the last. But this child asked only for a doghouse. He knelt slowly, so as not to frighten her. Up close, he saw the mud on her cheeks, the bruises on her arms, the desperation in her eyes. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice low, steady. Sarah clutched her rabbit tighter, lips trembling. "Sarah." Nathaniel studied her. He had spent years signing contracts, moving millions with a pen stroke, yet here he was, utterly powerless in front of a child. Something stirred in him, a flicker he had thought long extinguished. "There's no doghouse here," he said gently. "But there's a warm room inside. Food. A bed. You don't belong out here in the storm." Sarah hesitated. She had learned not to trust strangers. But something in his eyes, beneath the steel, seemed safe. Nathaniel extended a gloved hand. The rain dripped from his cuff, his palm open, waiting. Slowly, cautiously, Sarah reached out and placed her tiny hand in his. At that moment, Nathaniel Drake, the man who had spent his life building walls of glass and steel, felt the first crack in his fortress. The storm still raged outside, but within the gates of the Drake estate, something had shifted. The billionaire who had everything was about to discover the one thing he never knew he needed. The heavy oak doors of the Drake estate groaned open, and Sarah stepped hesitantly into a world she had never imagined. The grand foyer stretched out before her, glittering under a crystal chandelier. Marble floors reflected the light like pools of water. Paintings of stern ancestors lined the walls, their eyes following her every move. A sweeping staircase curled upward into shadows, so wide it looked like it could swallow her whole. To Sarah, it felt like stepping into a palace. To Nathaniel, it was simply home, though it had never truly felt like one. She clung to her ragged toy rabbit, dripping water onto the polished floor. Her eyes darted everywhere at once, searching for danger, for a reason she might be thrown out. Nathaniel closed the door behind them, shutting out the roar of the storm. He shrugged off his coat, watching as Sarah stood frozen, her tiny shoulders trembling. A maid appeared from the hallway, startled at the sight of the child. "Sir, is everything all right?" Nathaniel's tone was firm but calm. "Prepare something warm to eat. And draw a bath. Quickly." The maid hesitated, clearly curious, but his sharp look silenced her. She nodded and disappeared. Sarah's eyes flickered up at him, suspicious. Why are you helping me?" Nathaniel paused. For once, he didn't have an answer ready. He was a man who dealt in logic, contracts, negotiations. But this was instinct. "Because no child should be out in a storm," he said simply. He gestured for her to follow. Sarah's bare feet made soft slapping sounds against the marble as she trailed him into the dining room. The long table stretched endlessly, polished silver set neatly for no one. It was the kind of table made for grand feasts, yet it hadn't seen family in years. Moments later, steaming plates arrived. A bowl of thick soup, warm bread, roasted chicken. Sarah's eyes widened, her stomach growling audibly. "Go on," Nathaniel encouraged, sitting across from her. At first, she hesitated, suspicious of food that looked too good to be true. But hunger overcame fear. She tore into the bread, dunking it into the soup, shoveling spoonful after spoonful. She ate as though every bite might be her last. Nathaniel watched in silence. He noticed the way she occasionally glanced at him, as though expecting him to snatch the food away. He noticed, too, how she quietly slipped an extra roll into her pocket, hiding it beneath the table. Old habits of survival. When she finally slowed, her face smeared with crumbs, Nathaniel asked softly, "When was the last time you ate?" Sarah shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Yesterday, maybe the day before." The billionaire's jaw tightened. He had dined on €1,000 meals, wasted more food in a week than this child had likely seen in a year. And yet here she was, grateful for a simple bowl of soup. After dinner, the maid led them upstairs. Sarah clutched her rabbit tightly, her eyes wide at the towering ceilings and endless corridors. At last, they stopped before a grand bathroom where steam curled from the tub. Nathaniel turned to her. "You'll be safe here. Take your time." Sarah looked at the steaming bath with suspicion. "It's for me." "Yes, Nathaniel replied, almost startled by her disbelief. All for you. She edged toward it slowly, as if it were a trap. But when her fingers touched the warm water, her eyes widened. She stripped quickly, sliding into the bath, the heat wrapping around her thin body. A sigh escaped her lips, unguarded, pure relief. Nathaniel stepped outside, giving her privacy, but the sound lingered in his mind. It was the sound of a child rediscovering comfort. Later, dressed in a soft nightgown far too big for her, Sarah followed him down another hallway. He opened the door to a guest bedroom, its canopy bed piled high with pillows, its fireplace crackling warmly. Sarah stopped at the threshold, overwhelmed. This is for me too. Yes, Nathaniel said, almost gently. It's yours tonight. She walked slowly to the bed, her hand brushing the blankets. She looked up at him suddenly, fear flashing in her eyes. What if you change your mind? Nathaniel knelt so they were eye level. Sarah, he said firmly, you are safe here. No one will hurt you. Not tonight. Not ever again. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Sarah crawled onto the bed, pulling the covers around her small frame. She hugged her rabbit, still wary, but her eyelids grew heavy. As she drifted off, she whispered so softly he almost didn't hear, "My name is Sarah." Nathaniel lingered in the doorway, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in his chest. A warmth he couldn't quite explain. The storm outside began to ease, the thunder rolling away into the distance. But inside the Drake estate, another kind of storm was just beginning, the slow unraveling of a man who had built his life on stone and steel, now facing the fragile trust of a child. That night, Sarah slept deeply, her first peaceful sleep in years. And Nathaniel, alone in his study, poured himself a glass of whiskey he didn't drink. He stared into the fire, unsettled. For all his wealth, all his power, he had never been responsible for another life. But now, under his roof, lay a child who had no one else. And in the quiet crackle of the flames, Nathaniel realized a truth he hadn't expected. He wanted to protect her. Not because it was logical. Not because it was convenient. But because, for reasons he could not name, he cared. The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm at the Drake estate. Sarah woke early, padding barefoot through the halls, her ragged toy rabbit always clutched in her hand. She wasn't asked to work, but she found little ways to help, folding napkins in the dining room, dusting low shelves with a cloth, carefully placing flowers in a vase even if the arrangement looked a bit uneven. For Sarah, it was her way of saying thank you. For Nathaniel, it was a reminder that gratitude could live even in the smallest of hearts. Yet he noticed things. The way she sometimes paused to glance toward the doors, as though afraid she might be sent away at any moment. The way she tucked rolls of bread into her pocket during meals, old habits she couldn't yet let go of. One afternoon, Nathaniel lingered in the library doorway, watching her try to carry a stack of books far too heavy for her arms. She wobbled, nearly toppling over, before managing to set them down on a table with a proud little smile. It made him frown. She insists on doing these things, he thought, torn between admiration and guilt. Why does she fight so hard to belong here? And what shadows is she hiding behind those eyes? That evening, Sarah slipped outside into the cool air. She liked to stand by the gate, looking at the sky, whispering to her rabbit as if it could listen. But that night, she heard it, low voices drifting from beyond the iron bars. Drake still keeps her here? After what she saw, one man muttered. She won't last long, another replied darkly. No girl survives in that house unless she plays the game. And she doesn't look like the playing type. Sarah froze, her heart hammering. She pressed her toy to her chest, whispering shakily, "Stay strong, Sarah. Stay strong." The next morning, Nathaniel's younger sister, Clara Drake, arrived. Clara was 28, bright and sharp-tongued, with a presence that filled any room she entered. Her eyes immediately landed on Sarah, who was carefully setting spoons on the long dining table, standing on tiptoe to reach. Clara's brow furrowed. "Brother, this girl looks half-starved. Where did you find her?" Nathaniel hesitated. "She came to me in unusual circumstances." Clara's gaze was piercing. "Unusual? Or cruel?" The word stung. Cruel. Nathaniel had built walls of steel around himself, but Clara's bluntness slipped through easily. Was it cruel to bring Sarah here, or cruel to test her trust at all? Later, over tea, Clara leaned closer. Her tone was hushed but sharp. "Watch carefully, Nathaniel. This child doesn't just fold napkins, she's carrying something heavier. A secret. And secrets like that draw wolves." Nathaniel looked into his sister's eyes, troubled. "I've sensed it too." That night, Sarah sat in the dining hall, polishing a single silver spoon as though it were the most important task in the world. The flicker of candlelight made the room feel too big, too empty. Then, bang! A sharp sound rattled the window. Sarah jumped, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she turned. Outside, in the darkness, a man stood near the hedges, a hood shadowing his face. His finger pressed to his lips in a chilling command for silence. And then, just as quickly, he was gone. The spoon clattered from Sarah's hand to the floor. Her knees trembled. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Moments later, Nathaniel entered, his eyes narrowing at her pale face. "What happened?" he demanded. Sarah shook her head, clutching her rabbit. Words tangled in her throat. What if speaking brought worse danger? What if the whispers and the hooded man were all connected to something she must never reveal? Nathaniel stepped closer, his voice gentler. "You don't have to carry everything alone, Sarah." Her eyes lifted to his, fierce despite the tears welling there. "Some burdens, sir," she whispered, "are safer kept in silence." That night, Nathaniel lay awake, staring at the high ceiling of his room. Her words echoed again and again. Safer kept in silence. But silence could be deadly. And though Sarah slept only a few doors away, Nathaniel knew, unseen forces were already moving closer, circling the estate like wolves. And the child he had taken in stood at the very center of the storm. Late one evening, Sarah sat quietly with Drake and Clara in the study. Her little hands clutched the ragged toy she never let go of, her voice trembling as she finally confessed what she had seen. They hurt someone. I saw them," she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. Drake leaned forward, his voice calm but urgent. "It's all right, Sarah. You're safe here. Tell us everything." Through halting breaths, she described how the gang had cornered a man in an alley, beating him until he stopped moving. She had hidden, terrified, behind a dumpster. But then, she heard them talking about their next target. They said they would get someone they called the Hawk, Sarah whispered. Drake froze. Clara looked sharply at him. The Hawk was a name only a few people from his past knew, a nickname from his younger days in business, used by rivals because of his sharp instincts. For the first time, Drake realized the truth: Sarah hadn't just witnessed a murder. She had overheard a death sentence meant for him. Drake exhaled slowly, masking his fear. He reached for Sarah's hand. "Sarah, you didn't just save yourself. You saved me." Clara, her suspicion gone, sprang into action. She dialed the police immediately, her voice steady as she relayed the threat. Then, she turned to Drake. "We can't wait. We need the estate security ready, now." Within minutes, the Drake estate was on high alert. Guards doubled patrols, reinforced gates, and secured entry points. Drake hugged Sarah close, silently vowing not to let harm touch her again. But danger didn't wait for dawn. That very night, shadows moved across the vast lawns of the estate. The gang, confident and ruthless, had come to silence the little girl and finish their plan. Glass shattered. A door burst open. The mansion erupted into chaos. Drake fought with desperate strength, trading blows with masked men. A fist slammed into his jaw, another cut across his cheek, leaving blood trickling down. But he stood his ground, shielding Sarah with every move. Sarah screamed, clutching Clara, who tried to shield her as guards engaged the intruders. The estate echoed with crashes, shouts, and the struggle of life and death. Just when Drake staggered, pinned by one of the men, Sarah's trembling voice cut through the noise, "Dad! Behind you!" Fueled by her cry, Drake surged forward, throwing the man off just as the estate's reinforced guard stormed in, overpowering the gang. Moments later, red and blue lights flooded the driveway. The police rushed in, seizing the battered intruders. Drake, bruised and bloodied, sank to one knee as Sarah ran to him. He held her tightly, ignoring the pain. Tears streaked her face as she whispered, "I thought I lost you." He kissed her hair softly. "You saved me, Sarah. Just as I saved you." Clara watched, her doubts gone, her heart softened by the bond between man and child. The danger had passed. But something far greater had been born: family. The Drake estate was quiet now, though its silence felt heavy. Shattered glass still glittered in the corners, broken doors bore marks of forced entry, and the faint scars of the struggle lingered in every corridor. Yet, amidst the wreckage, something deeper had shifted. Sarah sat curled near the fireplace, her blanket trailing across the floor. She clutched her ragged toy as if it still held all her strength. Clara crouched beside her, offering a gentle smile and a steaming cup of tea. "You're safe now," Clara murmured. "The ones who hurt you will never return." But Sarah's eyes flickered with fear. "They said I belong to them. What if they're right?" Nathaniel, bruised and bandaged from the fight, stepped closer. His voice was hoarse yet resolute. "No, Sarah. You belong to no one but yourself. And if you'll allow me, I would like to stand by your side. Always." Her lips trembled, but for the first time, her fear softened. The days that followed saw swift changes. The estate's gates were fortified, security doubled, and Clara ensured the household ran with a renewed sense of safety. But the true change was in Nathaniel. He no longer spoke to Sarah as a servant, but as family. He listened as she haltingly shared her story, nights on the streets, hunger gnawing at her stomach, the cruelty of those who used and discarded her. Each word pierced his heart. One evening, he told her quietly, "I set out to test a stranger's honesty, but you tested mine. You reminded me that kindness is not weakness. It is strength." Sarah's eyes glistened. "You fought for me, even when it cost you blood. That means more than anything I've ever been given." Nathaniel knew then what he had to do. Weeks later, sunlight poured through tall courthouse windows as Nathaniel stood beside Sarah before a judge. His arm rested protectively at her shoulder, while Clara watched from the benches, her smile radiant. The judge looked over the papers, then at Nathaniel. "Mr. Drake, you understand the responsibility you are asking for? To legally adopt Sarah, and to be her father in every sense of the word." Nathaniel's voice was steady. "I do. She has already changed my life. I will spend the rest of mine protecting hers." The judge turned to Sarah. "And you, child, do you wish for this man to be your father?" Sarah's small voice trembled, but her words carried more weight than she realized. "Yes, Your Honor. He's already my dad." Nathaniel's eyes burned with tears as he pulled her close. For the first time, the title of a father was not a duty, but a gift. The gavel struck. It was official. That evening, back at the Drake estate, the garden was alive with gentle laughter. Clara walked arm in arm with Sarah, while Nathaniel followed, watching the two with quiet joy. The bruises of battle had healed, but the bond forged in fire remained unshakable. Sarah twirled in her simple dress, her toy tucked away at last. She laughed, free and unafraid, as Nathaniel bent down to join her by the fountain. "Dad," she said, testing the word again with a smile. He chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, Sarah. Thank you for choosing me." He pulled her into an embrace, Clara wrapping her arms around them both. The world beyond the gates was still cruel, storms still brewed in unseen places, but here, in this garden, kindness had taken root. And it was stronger than any shadow. Kindness is a choice. It can tear down walls, heal wounds, and transform lives. Nathaniel Drake saved Sarah, but in truth, Sarah saved him too. Their story is proof that sometimes, the smallest spark of kindness can ignite a fire bright enough to light the darkest nights. Their story reminds us all, the smallest act of kindness can save a life, heal a wound, and spark a change far greater than we imagine. And in the end, when wealth and power fade, kindness is the only treasure that endures. If this touched your heart, please like this video, it helps more people discover these inspiring stories. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that will restore your faith in humanity. And most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing.